All right, so welcome to another box office hits. Um, yeah, my name is Alex, and we're gonna just get right down to it. Doing 1 hour. There's totally a theme to this video, so just you know, obviously you can hear in the background my Game of Thrones because while I'm doing this, I'm actually going to be watching a little bit of Game of Thrones. Why not? And I'm going to be talking about Game of Thrones while I do this piece because there's like a theme. There's a theme here to think about. Anyway, so the piece that I'm going to be working on is over here. I'm going to grab it and show you. It's this one right here. So it's like, here, I'll zoom in. It's like this badass punk looking chick. Yeah. And we're going to work on the background for that because obviously like I use Photoshop and put things together all the time. So this actually is just on a different piece of paper. And this is going to be a special video because of the fact that I'm totally using a medium that I've never used. I don't know how to use. Actually I've always really wanted to know how to do watercolor. Coffee break there, of course. But have no experience with it, and painting in general just tends to usually make me pretty annoyed, so I shy away from painting as a whole. But this time we're gonna go for it because I got this cool thing. It's like a watercolor pen. I'm gonna call it a squid because it looks like a squid to me, and I played around with it a little bit to try and get my bearings and see what I can do with it over on this test page here. And, I kind of got a feel for it a little bit. So we're going to jump right in, okay? Yeah. I wasn't sure what kind of paper to work on. I have watercolor paper. I hate it. Like, absolutely. And marker paper doesn't work too well, I've discovered. So what I'm actually using is Epson premium presentation paper, and it's with the matte finish. And I've got it super wet right now, and it's actually like taking the water pretty good, which I think is great. That's exactly what I want to have happen. Cool. So, I said I was going to be talking about Game of Thrones, so of course I'll be talking. I will do that. I will talk about Game of Thrones. Season 5 just finished up. Oh, by the way, I don't do spoiler alerts, so I will just completely ruin your life if you are a super big fan of the show, but you haven't, gotten to whatever, you're not caught up with it yet. Well, I usually don't do warnings, but let's just say this is your warning that I will mess up everything that you think you know about the show or the story in general. And you can see right now, like, immediately that I have no idea how to use watercolors to, like, I hate watercolors. It immediately doesn't work. So we'll just deal with that. Yeah, we'll just, in fact, you know what? I'm going to go get some, like, towels.
Thank you, you're great.
Step forward. Real good service and ingenuity in uniting the houses of Lannister and Tyrell.
Oh yeah, so season 5 just wrapped up, and let me say that season 5, if you haven't read the books, you wouldn't know. But season 5 was abysmal in terms of sticking to the books. Should I say? Yeah, that's what I'll say. First, I mean, the show writers, they obviously know how the story is supposed to go. By the way, I've just decided that I'm going to treat this watercolor like a pen, and I feel like that's actually what it was intended for. Now that I think about it a little bit, I'm like, oh, why don't I just use it this way? And that seems very logical to me, so yeah.
I would ask you to find it in your heart to great honor joining our house.
Yeah, so they kind of like the show writers know where the books are supposed to go. They said that they've talked with George R.R. Martin about it, and that's like so they're not, you know, I guess they have some kind of guidance, but the thing is that they just made completely radical jumps from the way the story goes. I'm going to give you an example right here. Sansa, okay? Nobody likes Sansa. Like, we can get that out of the way right now, is that no one likes her character, and she always makes the wrong move whenever she's given an opportunity to, like, do something important, you know? Like, think back, okay? You get to the scene with, in season 1 with the wolves, with Arya and Joffrey gets bit by Arya's wolf, and Sansa sees what happened because Joffrey was being a real dick and attacked them, and she has a chance to tell the truth and be like, oh no, like he totally attacked us, and it was just self-defense, and don't hurt the wolf, or don't punish us. And she just lies. She's like, well, I don't know. I don't remember how it goes in the book, to be honest. I just remember the show and feeling like the show pretty accurately depicted what happened there. And in all fairness, up to the Red Wedding, I think the show was pretty faithful to the books in terms of how they treated main characters. But I'll get back to that. So anyway, no one likes Sansa. All right. And, you know, in season 5, they make out this thing that, like, Littlefinger takes her and he marries her to Ramsay Bolton, and then Ramsay's a real dick to her, like everyone else in the show. But none of that happens, okay? Like, none of it. None of that occurs in the books. The real thing is she actually stays in the Eyrie with Littlefinger. He's still in they're all still in the Eyrie, okay? And Littlefinger sets up a fake marriage to secure Winterfell with the Boltons by having I think it's still Ramsay Bolton. I'm not 100% sure on that. Marry Arya Stark. And you're like, right now, you're like, whoa, hold the phone. How did Arya get involved? Well, she didn't get involved. It's a fake. They have, I think her name is Jane Poole. I don't want to get that wrong, but basically they do a fake. Okay, it's a fake Arya. And they even call her fake Arya, like fans just call her fake Arya. Yeah, so they basically replaced fake Arya with Sansa in the show, and that's just really dumb because it's a stupid strategy for Littlefinger. All right, it doesn't make any why he would do any of that. It doesn't make any sense at all, and just yeah, it is stupid the way they did that because it's just not. That's not what Sansa's up to. Sansa is busy helping to raise Sweet Robin, which is Robin Arryn, the little kid, who also is a pretty interesting character. The show has totally downplayed him in a way, but it resembles another character, the old guy in the tree that Bran meets up with at the end of season 4. All right, well, that homeboy is a dude named Bloodraven, and he's a Targaryen. He's a really old Targaryen from like Maester Aemon, who is the old Targaryen guy in the Night's Watch that's always rolling with Sam and stuff, like the old guy, the blind guy, right? Who died in season 5, and also didn't die that way in the books, but whatever. They were both 2 Targaryens that went to the Wall at the same time, right? So that's how old this dude is, and that Bran just met, who's the tree guy. I mean, I guess he looks older than that because he's like part of a tree. But his whole deal is he's got one eye, and he sits on a weirwood throne. The weirwood being, the trees, right? You guys are there with me on that, at least. At the bare minimum, you're there with me for that, aren't you? So, if you look at Sweet Robin, I forget how the one-eyed thing works in. Point is, he's super similar. In the Eyrie, that you may have noticed, the throne that they're sitting on is a weirwood that should have been like a red flag at some point. And good thing they included that because it's clearly some kind of irrelevant thing. And yeah, so that's his character being kind of important. So Sansa's in charge of like raising this kid, okay, and none of that stuff that happens with her happens. It just doesn't go down at all. And that's really important because Peter Baelish has this whole like secretive plan or whatever, and the giving away Sansa doesn't make, like, why would he? It doesn't make sense. Why would he do that? Just give her away to the Boltons? That's such a stupid. He has the veil already. It's not like he's gonna. Like, he needs to secure the North. Why? Sansa's not related to him at all. It does nothing for him. Like, if you really think about it, just use your brain for a second. It doesn't make any sense why he would do that. So, yeah, that's, it just doesn't happen. It doesn't go down. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So, another character. So, let's look at season 5. Other characters that they have that with. So they went so off script. That's the frustrating part. Well, okay, whatever. I'll remember. I'll remember when as I go into it. I wanted to talk about why it is that you really need to read the books for Game of Thrones, or if you want to be like a fan of it. Okay, because I like constantly am annoyed at the fact that it takes George R.R. Martin so long to come out with each book, and it doesn't. In one sense, that's justified because that troll is writing other stuff, like additional books in that like are stuff regarding the Game of Thrones universe, and it's just like, okay, I mean, I suppose you can write that stuff, but it would really be nice if you would just keep writing the the actual series. But okay, so I'm on YouTube, right? And I hit up this guy's YouTube channel, and he analyzes the Game of Thrones series like really super in depth. I'm sorry when I do those awkward pauses. It's just because like my brain going into like think mode versus drawing or versus explaining shit mode, because I'm thinking about like what I'm doing with the drawing and stuff. So I'll just apologize for that now. That's what I'll do. I'll just apologize now, and we'll all let it go, won't we? Of course we will. You guys are nice people. You'll let it go. So, see, like that right there. Sorry. Oh yeah, he gets in depth with the timelines, and he in the books, and like resolves a ton of mysteries pretty convincingly.
How do you know what a king player looks like?
I was up with Brimwood.
pretty convincingly, but
Progressing out the woods and
um,
for the king. He's not the king's player, sorry to disappoint you. He wasn't any
he also highlights a few things that, like, I didn't even catch
I want you to answer at the same time.
in
I can't think
the
of
books
what-
whatsoever, right? So the thing that I didn't catch at all, I'm getting messaged by someone. Hold tight. Oh, swag. Okay. Yo, what's up, Brianda? So my friend's watching right now. Everyone say hi, Brianda. I don't know what the delay is on this. I think it's like a minute. So yeah, we'll get back to her. She'll get back to me. So anyway, right? So it's super cool when people watch. Like sometimes I get really annoyed when if people watch me draw like in public because it feels odd since they'll kind of stand over your shoulder, and I'd be more than happy if they just said hello and said like, oh, like can I watch you draw? And I would be completely chill with it. I wouldn't have an issue. But people just awkwardly stand and stare, and that starts to get on your nerves a little bit because you kind of like want them to say something. All right, but this is all right because see, I can't see people, can't see who's watching. Yeah, so life is good. But anyway, right. Anyway, so he resolves a bunch of these or he like, brings up all these things. Like, for instance, I'm going to go, okay, so Game of Thrones spoiler time, right here, right now, all right? Y'all want to know who Jon Snow's mother is. And I know there's some people out there in the audience right now that just did the whole collective sigh, like, yo, we all know Jon Snow's mother is actually Lyanna Stark, and she had him with Rhaegar, and that's how he's like actually part Targaryen and part Stark, and so Ned like promised Lyanna that he would protect Jon Snow so that he wouldn't get killed like all the other Targaryens. Blah blah blah. She's like, yeah, Ned, he's your nephew, and you promised me, Ned. But okay, it's all shit. That's not true. See, I used to be a big fan of that theory. Okay, because it makes a lot of sense, right? However, this dude in his YouTube channel gets in onto that topic, and he's like, well, let's analyze this. And then he does something that of course I've never thought of doing, because I'll explain in a second why, which is he actually busts out the Game of Thrones map and timeline for Robert's Rebellion. Okay, this ought to have been an obvious move for like everyone, but it escapes me completely to do this because I don't really like the Game of Thrones map. I feel like it's totally arbitrary. It seems arbitrary. Okay, it seemed arbitrary to me. Okay, that's what I should say, because obviously this opinion has changed a lot. So he breaks it down and he's like, look at the timeline for Robert's Rebellion, which he does a little bit of his own math. Like, for instance, that there's no official, like, in the story, they never say officially like Robert's Rebellion took this many years or it took this long or whatever. It takes like a year. Okay, it takes a year. That's what they do say. It takes about a year. They don't give official timing, like they don't give like official like in this month this battle occurred, in this week this or that occurred, right? It's all anecdotal from people's in their minds remembering it, and then he stitched it all together. And he used a little bit of math where he goes like, obviously this guy's I'll pull him up before I'm done, and you can watch the videos yourself. So I should say that I didn't come up with all this shit, but I'm relaying it here because it makes so much sense, and because it's got me so excited about like where the next book might go and stuff like that. So he goes, okay, well, when Jon and Tyrion go from Winterfell to the Wall, right, it's 3 weeks of hard riding. So he basically uses that as a metric, and then looks at battles in the war and where the different armies had to march from, and he like works out the map to figure out the dates of different battles and shit like that. In doing this, he realizes that Ned Stark's timeline doesn't permit him to have saved Jon from Lyanna and make it back to Winterfell while also having done all the other stuff that he does in the war. It just doesn't. It can't be done. It's like there's straight up like 5 months worth of time that are completely unaccounted for if you accept that theory. However, he gets into some other stuff, and he ends up revealing who Jon Snow's mom is, and he does it in conjunction with, like, this guy has like 50 videos, okay, and each one is about 10 minutes long, and a lot of them are like sets of 5 coffee break. A lot of them are like sets of 5, and they work together and stuff. And he explains. So here's how it goes, right? I'm not going to say who Jon Snow's mom is yet, all right? But the important thing is you need to know, like, there's this one key character guy that is in all of the Game of Thrones backstories, who seems like he knows all the answers to these mysteries, and that's this guy Howland Reed. All right, and if you don't recall who Howland Reed is, I mean, you may not if you didn't read the books at all. Like, you could have just completely disregarded his mention in the show completely, which that's like your mistake, right? But Howland Reed is this dude from the marshes, kind of in the Riverlands area, and his kids are when Bran's going to the wall, he meets the 2 kids, and they both have like magical dreams and powers and shit like that. Those are his kids, okay? So they're like these mystical type people who don't get involved in anything, and they live in a moving castle in the swamps, and they're very hard to track down, and no one really knows what to make of them because they're so epically out of place in like Westeros, okay? But so, okay. During Robert's Rebellion, or prior to Robert's Rebellion, okay, we have to go back a little bit to introduce how this character gets involved with shit. There's this giant tournament at Harrenhal, and this was something put on by Rhaegar Targaryen. He's the prince who kidnaps Lyanna. He sets this all up because he's all big on prophecy and shit, and he decides that he basically needs to meet Lyanna Stark. That's kind of the gist of things here, okay? And he sets up this tournament to give him himself the opportunity to do so, and they kind of have this little like a Knight's Tale thing where they like kind of fall in love. Like, it was probably like Lyanna. It probably wasn't a kidnap, is the point that starts the rebellion. She probably ran off with him. Homeboy's already married to Ilya Martell, but he's like all into Lyanna Stark. He's got that l sound. He's all into with his women having that ly action going on in the name. So anyway, he puts on this tournament, and randomly this dude Howland Reed shows up. Okay. And no one knows what the heck he was actually doing. He sort of just like wanders in, right? And he gets his ass beat by these 3 squires for, I guess, being like, from where he's from, I suppose it's like a little bit of like a anti-Howland Reed thing. I don't know what their deal was, but they beat him up, okay? So he gets his butt beat, and it's kind of random, like okay, so this guy sucks at fighting, obviously. He's obviously a wuss, okay? He gets whipped by 3 squires, which, like, imagine Brienne of Tarth, right? She, like, badass fighter. She's not getting her ass owned by 3 squires. She's not getting her ass owned by 3 anybody's. She doesn't. I'm watching Game of Thrones right now. She just whooped on 3 dudes on her own. Oh, damn, I dropped the marker into the black ink. That could have been disastrous. So this guy's clearly like a weakling, And he mysteriously arrives at this and decides to join in the tournament. And it's like he wasn't invited. He's not he's not supposed to be there for any reason, right? But he gets himself like involved with the Starks, and there's this homegirl there named Ashara Dane, all right, and she's a straight up babe. Okay, she's like bodacious. She's got the titties. She's hot as shit, super hot. Okay, everyone got a thing for Ashara Dane, right? And Howland Reed basically through like some shenanigans, which this dude in his video, I won't ruin all his videos for like you can go watch him. He basically explains how Howland Reed sets up Brandon Stark, who is Ned Stark's older brother, at this tournament. He like sets her up with him. And this, by the way, in this guy's videos, he totally like he has textual support. He busts out quotes 24/7. So it's not like he's like just freely hypothesizing about this. He's pretty well backed his stuff up here. So anyway, by the way, I think you can tell I'm drawing a wolf, right? Is that clear at this point? This is a fucking wolf. All right, I don't like you know, yeah. Are we there? This is a wolf. This is a wolf. It has a wolf tail, wolf legs. He's doing like this arching back thing. Face. Wolf face, right? It's over there. Wolf face right there. Okay, so I'm really proud of myself, by the way. I've never done watercolors before. This little squiddy pen is the shit. So I'm just gonna throw it out there right now. All right. So we're doing a wolf. We're drawing a wolf. And if you guys, you know, I don't know if y'all were there at the beginning of the video, and I said that there's a big reveal. I mean, it's in the video description. There's a big reveal at the end of this of like a brand new set of drawings that I'm doing. So, and you know, so you guys should get very excited. And if you're even mildly intuitive, you could guess what it's related to. But so anyway, so okay, yeah, it was definitely a wolf, is what Brianda says. So that's good. Anyway, so how was I talking? Oh yeah, okay. So Ashara Dane, all right, and Brandon Stark, homeboy Howland Reed hooks them up together, and it's virtually assured that they got to some baby making. All right, so keep that in mind. Now, later on, the rebellion starts, okay? And Howland Reed is part of Ned Stark's homeboy group. I think they're actually Northerners, is the Reeds are. They're like Northerners that live somewhat in between the Riverlands and the North. Is kind of like where they exist. They're like swamp people, okay? With somewhat mystical powers, okay? Like prophecy powers and shit like that. So anyway, he's part of Ned Stark's group, and very early on in the war, and keep in mind that at this point in time, Brandon Stark is dead. All right, you have to know this, okay? Brandon Stark has been burned to death by the Mad King, along with Ned Stark's father. Lyanna has been kidnapped. These are the main reasons that start this war. All right, so they're dead. Okay, so they're all hooked up, and they have a little chit chat. All right. Oh, and during the time period that Brandon Stark went to Winterfell and shit like that, Ashara Dane was there too. She was actually Ilya Stark's handmaiden. Yeah, because keep in mind, like Lyanna Stark is in King's Landing, right? Rhaegar kidnaps her, and they're all up in King's Landing, and then that's why Brandon Stark and his dad, who I think was Rickard Stark, they go down there, okay, to like save her and tell the Mad King, like, yo, you gotta give our lady back. Like, you don't just go steal people's women. That's Dothraki shit right there. You don't do that, okay? We're Westeros, all right? We're like the Europe of the 17th century world. We civilize shit, okay? So anyway, they run into Ashara Dane, and they have a little powwow, and they also run into Wyla, who is a wet nurse, and this other chick. So these are the three chicks that everyone presumes are the most likely people that Ned Stark could have, like, you know, banged to get Jon during the war. Like, obviously, because people in you know, in Game of Thrones, the Game of Thrones world, they don't have the whole Lyanna plus Rhaegar theory, right? They think that Ned Stark just has a bastard at the war. You need to keep that in mind, right? Okay. Those three chicks are the most likely ones, all right? And so then war happens, and Ned goes to the Tower of Joy along with Howland Reed, okay, who is apparently like a super badass fighter at this point, which calls into question the whole thing about him like mysteriously showing up at the Harrenhal tournament and getting his ass beat by 3 squires. Like, it just doesn't add up, all right? He, as the guy says in the video, and I believe him, I'm totally there with this this theory. Dude was there for a reason. He had like some kind of master plan. He was pursuing like some kind of prophecy he had foreseen, something along those lines. And yeah, so in the Tower of Joy scene, basically Ned Stark and 6 other dudes, one of them being Howland Reed, showdown against 3 of the Kingsguard. And the guy goes into the particulars of who the 3 Kingsguard are. And it's like they're not arbitrary. Let's put it that way. They actually, which Kingsguard are there is super significant, interconnected with all his other things that he reveals about the story, shit like that. So they fight him, and the only 2 who survive are Howland Reed and Ned Stark. Okay, which, like, you know, that. So basically, Howland Reed's the only surviving person who knows what the heck went down at the tower, because Lyanna's in the tower. She dies. She makes Ned make her a promise. Ned makes her a promise, and this and that, and blah 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 blah. All right, and then he shows this one significant thing, which is that they like pull the tower down. I don't know how they achieve this, but Ned Stark pulls down the tower, is what is said in Game of Thrones in the books. Okay. Oh, by the way, the nice part about like half of this shit is that because a lot of this is from Ned Stark's memories, you just have to read book 1 to get a lot of this stuff. Because he's, you know, spoiler alert, he dies at the end of the first book. Like, if you don't know that already, I don't know. You don't deserve spoiler alerts. You're just not following along. So, so yeah, if you're really averse to reading, all you have to read is book 1. And if you read book 1, you're gonna want to read the rest of the books. That's how it is. This wolf is turning out fantastic. I'm gonna pat myself on the shoulder. Pat, pat. There it is. Coffee break. It gets really hot in this room when I do these videos because I have like the lights turned on and up really high, but then I close all the doors and stuff, so there's no ambient noise. It just gets hot in here. So steamy. All right, I kind of like need this to dry. I mean, it's not drying fast enough. This is a big issue. Well, I could gung-ho this shit, couldn't I? Yeah. I'll do it. So, where was I? Yeah, they bring this tower down, and they build pyres for the homeboys that they killed, like the knights or the Kingsguard that they killed there. They build them like little like rubble mounds to bury them in, which is weird because you would think they would return the body, which is something they said. But so they leave there, Ned having made some kind of promise that isn't revealed yet, and they they get the hell out of there. All right, Howland Reed goes back to wherever the Reeds are from. Like, you can look on the map and see where they're from, but we have not seen this place in the stories at all. It's where, like, I don't know. It's just, don't worry about it. You just haven't seen this place yet. He goes back there. So we haven't seen him since. Presumably he's just been there chilling while all the rest of this crap goes down everywhere else. So, yeah. But then here's, like, the really weird thing. Ned has made Lyanna a promise, okay? And the details of the scene make it quite clear that she has just given birth to a baby, all right? And we don't know who this baby is, but we do know that Ashara Dane in a roughly similar time period was rolling with this wet nurse, and you're like, well, why the hell would, like, she like have a wet nurse, right? Unless she had a kid, okay? And then Ned Stark goes to return Arthur Dane, who's one of the Kingsguard that got killed in their fight at the Tower of Joy. He returns his sword to Ashara Dane because the Danes are like a big time family in Dorne, so he's returning their Valyrian sword. It's like a big thing. It's just a matter of custom that you would do something like that. And they chit chat for a bit, have a mysterious conversation of sorts or whatever, and mysteriously she throws herself from a cliff very soon after that. Okay, so you're like, how does this relate to Jon Snow at all? So here's the deal. We now have to look at Daenerys. Okay, I hate trying to explain this because like it is still fresh in my mind and novel. But yeah, so anyway, Dany, there's just one important fact here, being that basically Dany has been lied to by the people who her brother who raised her about where they lived and where she was born. And you can tell this because she always has dreams about the house with the red door with the lemon tree outside of it in Bravos. The only issue being the fact that there are no lemon trees in Bravos. And you think this might be just something arbitrary, but like, trust me. I mean, this isn't a trust me thing. The guy in the video goes into it much more in depth, but George R. R. Martin is not one to be arbitrary in his books. It's not his thing. He's like one of those guys that likes everything to fit together like a chessboard, although it may not always seem that way. He totally is. Digging this watercolor action right here. This is making me very happy, guys. So he basically the only place that has lemons that's been mentioned in the entire Game of Thrones universe is Dorne. All right, and you know what else had a red door? The Tower of Joy. So think on that for a second, and it seems really plausible that Daenerys was born in the Tower of Joy. Well, only one person was given birth in the Tower of Joy around the time Daenerys was born, and that would be Lyanna Stark. All right, so now your mind is probably, you either are completely skeptical of everything I'm saying right now, or else you're like, oh my god, Dany is actually half Targaryen, half Stark, not Jon Snow. What? This is mind-boggling, right? So you may not believe that, but at the end of my video here, I'll tell you the guy's videos that you can go check out because he's thoroughly convincing. Like, he's got the textual support, not me. I'm not invested enough in explaining this. But he, yeah, basically our Rhaegar plus Lyanna equals Jon Snow is not true, but Rhaegar plus Lyanna equals Dany is true. And now this brings up the only things that are questionable, like that have to be brought into question about the theory, being that Dany is actually older than Viserys. But he has some pretty like convincing explanations for why that would be hidden from her based on he goes into Varys's plot, and that one's actually very interesting too because everyone's always like, well, what's Varys up to? It's cool, check it out. But now you're like, okay, so say you're convinced right now that it makes a lot of sense. Dany could be part Snow, part Targaryen, right? But you know, right now you're sitting there, you're like, well, okay, like I can buy this, but what about Jon Snow? Well, recall back in the Tournament of Harrenhal, Howland Reed, being mystical, strange mofo that he is, sets up Brandon Stark with Ashara Dane. And later on, and I mean, like, this one's pretty conclusive. They were getting to banging, okay? Later on, when Brandon Stark is in King's Landing, prior to getting burned alive, obviously, so is Ashara Dane, and who knows what kind of political intrigue and stuff was going on there, but it's highly likely that they at least met up with each other for a little bit of R&R, all right? So when Ned Stark goes to return the sword to Ashara Dane and they have a little chat, she later commits suicide. And why the hell, like, why would you commit suicide? If you think, like, does she have a vested interest, or does she have a reason to commit suicide? Not really. Like, you know, and that's the last thing that Ned Stark does before he returns to Winterfell. I should have added that. So before he returns with Jon, he does all this stuff. That's a key thing to recall. So, and him returning with Jon after seeing Ashara Dane and all that stuff is kind of like one of the reasons why people think she could be Jon's mom. Like, in the story, this is one of the reasons people think that. So, kind of makes you wonder what's up with that. Well, we now return to Dany. All right. Have you guys ever wondered who Quaithe is? She's so maybe you don't know who Quaithe is. So say you only watch the show. In season 2, when she's in Karth, there's that chick with the mask that always shows up and is giving her advice. Well, that chick is all up in the books for a while. That's Quaithe. And for some reason, Quaithe is super interested in what's going on with Dany. And also, Quaithe's advice is always like, look to the stars, look to the moon and the stars and shit like that. All of her advice actually is very reminiscent of Dorne and the House of Dane. It's like the coat of arms of the House of Dane is got like the stars and everything in it. I don't remember this particularly, but again, watch the guy's videos and he will get quite in depth with it. And it's suspiciously similar enough to the point that here's the theory. Okay, I'm just going to now finally spill it all out for you. Ashara Dane and Brandon Stark, they get together, they hook up at the Tournament of Harrenhal or in King's Landing before the war, okay? Ashara Dane gets pregnant, all right? Brandon Stark gets killed, and Ned Stark and Robert Baratheon go to war. During this time period, Rhaegar has Lyanna up in the Tower of Joy, or, you know, during the war at some point, he moves her to the Tower of Joy to give birth, and he puts 3 Kingsguard in charge of protecting the tower. And they're not insignificant members of the Kingsguard. They're like, who they are is actually kind of important stuff. But of course, Ned Stark and Howland Reed and their other homies that were with them defeat those guys, and Ned Stark takes a baby from Lyanna and makes her a promise. Now, the gist of the story is that the baby that Ned Stark, so this is like the part where when I finally lay this all out, you're gonna be like, you're gonna be very skeptical, because you're gonna be like, oh, that's like so contrived. There's no way that that's the way it would have worked out. This and that. So the baby that Ned Stark takes from Lyanna is Daenerys, okay, and the baby that Ashara has with Brandon Stark is Jon Snow. There's only one Jon, but, well, there's not actually, there's other Jons, but Jon Snow, that's who we're talking about, okay? And the theory goes like this. Lyanna does what we all already thought. She basically wants Ned to promise to take care of the kid because people are killing Targaryens left and right, and Daenerys is, you know, a freaking Targaryen, right? So she can all get killed. Ned makes the promise and is like, well, how am I going to protect this blonde-haired, purple-eyed kid? It's clearly a Targaryen. Only Targaryens are blonde-haired with purple eyes. So he goes to a Ashara who he knows has just given birth and proposes to trade kids. Okay? Why her? I can't quite remember. I believe it's due to the fact that they've become really good friends and she was banging his brother and stuff like that. So the guy in the dude's videos, he gets much more into explaining it than I will be. And they trade. Okay, Ned has no like real idea of what Ashara wants to do with Danny. All right, but then Ashara supposedly jumps off a cliff and commits suicide. The way the theory wraps itself up very nicely is the idea that Ashara actually faked her death so that she could go across the ocean, assume the identity of Quaithe, and keep an eye on Danny, which is what Ned basically asked her to do. And Ned takes Jon Snow to Winterfell and passes him off as his bastard, which is much easier to do since he looks like he's a Stark, right? Because actually, according to this theory, Jon is actually the true heir to Winterfell. You know, do the math. Brandon was the older brother. This was his firstborn male son. So actually, Jon Snow ought to be heir to Winterfell, according to this theory. And it would make everything work out for Ned because he obviously had Catelyn pregnant at the time, and then Robert was born. So it doesn't mess up any inheritance stuff to just say that Jon's his bastard and then deal with the fact that, you know, that he's got to pretend like he broke his oaths. So that's how that plays out. All right. I mean, I get, like, right now you're probably like, huh? Like, that doesn't make any sense, right? Well, there's a few more bits of supporting evidence for this. The first being that, and you have to have read the books to get these supporting bits of evidence. But basically, the books are written in first-person point of view, so it's interesting that we get to see characters' emotional and mental states better than you do in the show. But every time, so Ned basically, every time he recalls the promise he made his sister, first off, he never thinks of Jon, not even once. And every time he thinks of the promise, he feels remorseful, and he calls it the broken promise. So that wouldn't make any sense if Jon was the person he would promise to protect, because he successfully protected Jon. All right. He did that like way too good, actually. His wife hates Jon. Catelyn hates Jon. So that just doesn't make any sense. And mysteriously, Daenerys, when she gets to Qarth and starts encountering Quaithe, she gets sent all these dreams, and these dreams always they're like related to her and her origins and things like that. And the same thing happens with Ned when he's in King's Landing. Every time he thinks about leaving, he gets like these visions. These visions aside, because the guy goes into talking about what's up with the visions and everything that people have, Quaithe has developed some kind of mystical power. And by the way, people from Dorne have tons of mystical powers in the story, like Loki. You're just gonna have to abide by that fact. And the idea being that Quaithe is sending Ned these dreams to get him to stay in King's Landing and to stop Robert from trying to get in a fight with Daenerys and kill Daenerys or assassinate her, which is what was going down at the time. And these dreams always successfully keep him there, which is interesting. All right. So the way it works out is basically that Ned doesn't know that Ashara Dayne faked her death. He thinks she's really dead. He feels as though he's failed to protect Daenerys, who he promised Lyanna he would protect, and that's why he's always remorseful when he thinks about the promise and everything, and that's why he never thinks of Jon when he thinks about the promise and everything. So that's kind of how that wraps up. I think it wraps up pretty nicely, especially having read the books and then revisited some of those parts after watching the guy's videos. I'm thoroughly convinced of this whole idea. It's pretty badass. So anyway, Still working on this fucking wall. This paper doesn't dry very fast at all is the frustrating thing. And I've never done watercolor before, so I don't know any like mystical techniques for drying the paper faster or really working better with it. But it's a cool wolf, yeah. Plus we're getting close to where I said I would end the video, so that's, you know, that I should paint his face, you know. Let's get down to that. So anyway, yeah, those were your like Game of Thrones updates and stuff. The show really doesn't keep any of that. It's left so much of that out, is what I'm trying to say. And there are various other aspects of this that it is left out. Things that are just subtext that didn't make it into the show early on. Just they're gonna have to make up alternate explanations for why different things happen or how they get to the ending that they're going to get to, and that's pretty sad, because I think visually and in terms of casting, any other type of metric, the shows have done a really good job, but they just left out so much stuff. So if you're really into Game of Thrones, which I'm really into Game of Thrones, it's one of my favorites. I would say to check out the guys' videos, which I'll say right before I close this video, because I don't want people to like ditch, okay, and immediately go watch this other guy's videos. Like, I'm not his marketing person. I mean, I've done a fair amount of marketing for him, haven't I? But that's not what I'm here for, if you dig. This looks a lot better on the screen than I think it looks personally in real life, but you know, could just be me being self-critical. Yeah. Yeah. And I think I'm just gonna fill it out.
Cut yourself. Never thrown a sword before, have you? You look like a baby with a wrong. Look at that! Stop! Why break it? They think you might rain or in the gate and the castle blood. Let them fight! That's it. That's what you can do. You little shit. You tricked your father, teacher that. Oh, was it your whole mother?
I'm still there, guys. I mean, you knew that because I was fucking drawing, but I still needed to say it, right? You know? Alright, what are we getting at? 11:25. 11:25. I said I would go to 11:30, so that's what I'll go to. I won't be a liar. Well, here's what I'll do, because I'm gonna have to look up the dude on YouTube really fast. So I'm pretty, actually, I think I know who it is. I'm just gonna Okay, one sec. That's going to be where I'm going to stop that drawing. But don't leave. Don't leave. All right, let me see. What was his name? I'm on YouTube. And it was... Sure. Yeah. Yeah. You want to look up a guy on YouTube named Preston Jacobs. And an example of one of his videos would be called... let me see. Try a song of ice and fire, whispers from a red mask. So there you go. That you're gonna want to watch those videos because they're freaking great. All right, my Game of Thrones episode just ended. Everything is winding its way down right now. So time for the big reveal. All right, we've been talking a lot about Game of Thrones, and as you can tell, I was working on a wolf with my watercolor, and I had this character that I drew earlier. Try to zoom in with the. It's very hard to do this. All right, so character. Okay, these are both two halves of the. These are both two halves of this. Like they're gonna go together. And I'm gonna do a lot more work on this. By the way, this is not where this will end, but this is where it'll end for the sake of the video. I'm going to be doing a new set of drawings. They're going to be Game of Thrones characters set in a kind of like city, as if they were in like contemporary city lives, and they were all either like thugs or some kind of like, think like Gotham meets Game of Thrones. So this character, big reveal, and I'm messing with the ages of the characters a bit too. This is going to be Arya Stark. All right. Like a little bit more grown up, because here's what I think about it, okay, is like I think Arya Stark is like her character in the books has to grow up to be like super hot, because if you think about it, Catelyn Stark was supposedly like pretty hot when she's young. Sansa Stark is supposed to be pretty hot, and Ned's always like, oh yeah, Arya reminds me of Lyanna. Lyanna was supposed to be like a total babe, so Arya Stark has to be a babe at the end of the day, or a badass babe, you know. So that's what I'm going for with the character there. But she would still be a total punk, and her wolf is still alive in the show, or in the books, doing its wolf thing. So I imagine that at some point she will meet up with her wolf again and wreck things. So that's where that's going. Anyway, yeah, so thanks for watching. Again, my name's Alex Jimenez. I think, people watching already know who I am. Check out my website, www.theboombox.com. That's Box, B-A-U-X. The A-U is for authentic. And yeah, catch me on another live stream. Follow me on Instagram at boomslice17. Yeah, peace out.